So for the last 10 months now, I actually was recording this earlier, and then I saw my friend, so I stopped the recording while the evening call to prayer was happening, because I wanted to kind of give more of an illustration. But for the last 10 months, I've been living in a predominantly Muslim country, Zanzibar. And we live in a time where there is a profound level of separation and a profound level of, I don't even know what it's called, but just distortion of values. You know, so many news stories at the moment coming out of Europe, coming out of the UK and so on about, knife crime and attacks, and obviously there's a lot of people being led in for a particular agenda, which, I think 99% of the general public in each of these countries is not really a fan of illegal immigration, especially considering the majority of that illegal immigration is let's just say, ripe, aged young men for whatever reason. But living in a Muslim country, what I would say is that they're lovely, lovely, lovely people. Some of the most generous, kind, just humble and lovely people I've ever come across. And I've lived in a Hindu country, and I've lived in a Buddhist country, and I can say the same for both of those too. Now, Hindus and Buddhists in the modern times aren't known for anything particularly dangerous, but certainly in the ancient history, there's plenty of crazy too, and certainly in the Christian history, there's plenty of crazy too. So every single formalized religion has its dark side. But having lived in all these different countries, what I can categorically say is that underneath all of it, everybody just recognizes that we're human. And I've had some really beautiful conversations with people in each of these, actually. Hindu isn't a religion as such. It's a set of values based upon deep understanding of the human condition. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that, especially in the West, which is why it's the longest standing culture that exists today. But what I would say underneath everything is that humans be humaning, and the formalization of religion is what causes so much suffering, and the manipulation of the ancient texts. The foundation of every single major religious text is know thyself, love thy neighbor, and surrender to something greater than your identity. And at the core of it, every single human who interacts with any of these formalized religions has that understanding and has that belief system. And so, whilst there's a lot of conflict in the world right now, and whilst, especially in Europe, there is seemingly a quite literal invasion occurring with, countries just having open borders to these illegal immigrants. Those people that are coming in and causing quite so much tragedy, quite so much pain, quite so much suffering, are a minority. And people who are actually anchored in the truth of these formalized religions are just like anyone else. Peaceful, loving, generous, kind. And those are the foundational values of every single one of these formalized religions. They just happen to have occurred and been formalized in a different culture, which is why there's so many of them, because every single human on the planet has the ability to connect with the divine, has the ability to connect with God, source, the universe, whatever you want to call it, Allah. And they've each got different accounts of different people who are more in touch with that divinity than perhaps other people were. And so they could perform miracles, they could do incredible things, they could, they saw beyond the veil. And so what we need to do as a species is come together. We hear it all the time and it sort of sounds cliche, but just realize how much more we have in common than we do have differences. We might think a few things differently up here, but even the radical people, even the people that are doing heinous things in Europe right now, in the UK, in Germany, in Italy, in Ireland, Ireland's looking crazy. Even these people, I have far more in common with those people than I do not. It just happens that they've got some really, really nutty thoughts going on. But those thoughts are coming from a fundamentally sick place. They're coming from a place of distortion and a lack of alignment with God, with truth, with source. And so those people need nothing more than actually to be loved. And love, by the way, can be, and this is where it gets very real for the men of this world, love can be a hard hand. Love can be a punch in the fucking face, if necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is, actually I'm going to tell a story. So my dad, in my dad's day, he's in his sort of mid 60s now. The boxing was a formalized sport at his school. And when he was at school, there was this kid in his year, or I think he might have been a year older than him, who was a bully. And my dad was a bit of a kind of jock. He was, rugby player, cricket player, hockey player, and he loved his boxing. And he got in the ring with this bully one time, and this bully had, taken advantage of him and taken advantage of a number of other kids. All right, mate, chill out. And my dad got him in the ring and cleanly knocked him out. And after that moment, they were good friends. Why? Because he got humbled. And sometimes we all need a good humbling. I know in my life I've needed a good humbling from time to time. And as a good friend of mine back in Bali, where I used to live, says, everybody needs to get punched in the face. And when you really understand this and understand that, especially as men, there's nothing that can't be sorted out with a formalized conflict. And I don't mean war, that's dumb. I think we need to evolve out of launching fucking missiles at each other and so on. It's very stupid, very, very, very stupid. And as men especially, sometimes I've taken actually groups of men on retreat in Bali, and taken some mushrooms, and at 2:00 in the morning we're wrestling on the beach, getting out whatever we need to get out. And I remember one time in particular, my co-host, a South African guy, he was like, right, bro, it's time. I was like, all right, cool. And he used to do wrestling back in his college days. And I've never wrestled in my life, but I'm 6'5" and 105 kilos. So, and I used to play rugby. So I know that I can move. I know that I can use my body in a pretty effective way. And after about, 10 minutes or so of really getting it out on the beach, we were in a grapple, and he just kind of spoke very staunchly and looked in my eyes and said, I get it, no power struggles. And he was talking about, between us in a business partnership. And I'd felt competition from him before, but I'd never had any need to compete with him. I knew that he had skills and talents and a way of being that I wasn't. And I thought he knew the same about me, but seemingly he had some competition and power stuff going on, which he needed to get out in a wrestling match. Great, wicked. And by the way, neither of us won. I was stronger, but he was more skillful. And I think they kind of cancelled each other out, and we just ended up puffing each other out and being like, all right, well, let's just call it a day. And we were closer after that, it dropped us into a deeper level of acceptance of one another and love for one another. And I think if anything, that's what the world needs right now, is more men holding men accountable and saying, hey, how about you don't stab a fucking child? How about you don't stab a woman? How about you don't fucking gang up on some random dude in the street? How about we just get into some boxing rings, or go on some dojos or something, and fundamentally realize that we're made out of the same fucking stuff. We really are. And the sooner the better, because we've got some major power struggles going on at the highest levels in society right now, and these lower level one-on-one or one on a few power struggles are just a mimic, a mirror, a microcosm of that macrocosm. And it's not necessary. It's really not necessary. I'm very grateful that President Trump, all he really wants is peace. Like, don't get me wrong, he's going to do business along the way. He's going to make America a lot of money on the way. There's no doubt about that. But, no wars were started in his last term. And this term, he's, already offering to sort out wars that are existing and ensure that they don't continue. And we need a bit more of that in the world, because there's far too many people profiting off of, what are fundamentally, all wars are illegal wars, but there's far too many people, actually not very many, but there's far deep and institutional raping of nations and of people through war that has existed for far too long, and it really does need to end. Now, my, I guess, life experiences and the depths that I've been to within myself, and in terms of expansive awareness around how the universe works and so on, shows me that, one, we are all the same, but two, if we come into those three core values that I mentioned earlier, to know ourselves, to love our neighbor, and to connect with something beyond our identities, our egos, what our beliefs about ourselves are, it's very easy to connect with people. I connect with people here all the time who are either Christian or Muslim, not because I'm either of those, but because I connect with God, because I share my faith with them, and because I speak to them about how to live an optimal life and how to understand reality deeper. And when we just speak about the core values, they're like, oh yeah, same. Very, very different sets of frames that we see things through when they're speaking through religion and speaking through kind of, in my eyes, kind of dogma, but the underlying values are identical, and this is what we need to continue to accept. It's got very dark since I've been doing this. I was aware that was going to happen, but yeah, apologies. You see the sunset and the ocean over there. I'm just at a friend's house now. He's just popped out to get some fruit, so I thought I'd record a little video and just speak to this, because, as I said, I was walking earlier and listening to the call to prayer, and it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's such a wonderful evening practice that I get to witness every single day here, and we just get to appreciate each other and appreciate all of these cultural values, these cultural habits, you want to call them that, that allow these traditions to continue. And I think the leaders of these organized religions need to step the fuck up too and start penalizing people who step out of line and cause damage to their brothers and sisters, whether those people are from the UK or Australia or America or Egypt or Japan or China. It doesn't matter. Doesn't fucking matter. We need to learn how to love each other, otherwise humanity is just going to continue to be stuck in cycles of apocalyptic, absolute, meteoric rises and then apocalyptic falls of society, which are incredibly predictable. And it's not necessary. We're just afraid and have no idea of the unknown that exists beyond these paradigms of rising and falling of societies. We're in the demise of the American empire now, even though Trump and Elon are trying to do their best to save it. It's a culture that needs to die off, let's be honest. Consumerism at its height, which is spread across the world, and the rise of the Chinese empire. That's now, if you really understand the finances behind everything, it's the same people financing all of these different empires, which is why they continue to grow in power and wealth. But again, it's the same concept. It's hoarding. It's It's not creating, it's hoarding. And we need to individually learn that we are the creator. We are a fragment of God incarnated, and a fragment of water from the ocean over there is still the ocean. So each of us, even though we are a fragment, even though we feel separate half the time, even though we may feel isolated, we are still a fragment of God, which means that we are God. Every single one of us, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, doesn't matter. We're all the same. Let's land in that, please.